so happy we alive.
We're doing all around the country on this thing. If you look at what's going on medical marijuana and student drug testing, what you see is that therein lies the true passion of this administration. Walters, you saw last year, all of a sudden, the Sheriff's Association, the National Sheriff's Association, lambasted John Walters. So why is he talking about marijuana? Usually sheriffs like talking about marijuana, but now they're freaked out about methamphetamine. For good reason, for pretend reasons, whatever. But between methamphetamine and marijuana, John Walters is this. So you can see he can't give it up. So he goes out there and he talks about methamphetamine, he talks about task force. He's always looking to find ways to put in there the need for coerced treatment and for more criminal sanctions and for more restrictions and all this sort of stuff. But we know where his passion is on this issue. We know what he really wants to be doing is going out there. He's afraid to condemn medical marijuana, right? John Walters will never have a one-on-one debate, nor will other members of the administration ever have a one-on-one debate on this issue. They are afraid. He's surrounded by phalanxes of people that keep him from being exposed to any counter-arguments. He dare not get within a mile's distance or shouting distance of a doctor, of a patient, or of a scientist. Flow in, hide, don't announce where you're going, find a school that has just started doing student drug testing without cause, give a little rah-rah speech, quickly be whisked out to a meeting with the newspaper editors, no debate please, let's move on. Now of course, almost nobody's heard of John Walters too, except us. I had such mixed feelings about that. I mean, on the one hand, when McCaffrey was up there, all over, flying around, mixing it up, or when Asa Hutchinson, the one good thing about Asa Hutchinson, they had the DA is he liked to debate. He was a politician. I'll debate, sure, I'll say anything, I'm going to get up there, yeah! John Walters, the nice side of that, of course, was that they kept our issue a bit in the news, and they gave us a chance to respond. And now you have John Walters there, and Karen Tandy. God, how did I mix that one up? Karen Tandy, you have them, but they don't have a public profile. One's a political hack, the other one's a law enforcement hack, right? They're never in the newspapers. Well, the downside of that is we get fewer opportunities to mix it up with them. Because we know anytime we have a chance to mix it up with them, we take a step forward. The upside of that is it means that they have no voice and they have no plan. They have no voice and they have no plan. And I think what's so beautiful about what happened this morning is it shows the desperation. It shows that they are trying to defend the position of a 20% minority of this country, maybe less at this point. Right? The more they dig in on medical marijuana, the more they dig in on an issue where the vast majority of Americans are on our side, the more opportunity we have to push forward and bring more people with us. Right? If we're just fighting on the terrain of marijuana legalization where we only have 40%, or depends where you are, less than that in the South, more than that in the West, then they can keep playing on these fears and the issues that were put up there before, and the ones that Chris Conner rolled off in his speech, all the potencies and this and that. But when they're playing on this terrain, when they're trying to say things which, we found, in fact, there's something like 1 out of 3, 30 to 40% of all Americans actually say that they know somebody who uses marijuana for medicinal purposes. Right? That this is not some obscure thing where people know somebody, right? What they're doing is basically saying, as the man caught in bed with his mistress by his wife said, who are you going to believe? Me or your own lying eyes? That's where they're at now. That's where they're at. So this is the opportunity right now. This is the opportunity. Now, what I want to know, of course, is how do you all think about how we're going to move this thing forward to another level, right? We know. We know that whenever the patients are put forward, we win. We know that. We've seen it. It just keeps building. We know, and I think there's something of a consensus in this movement now, right, that we have to keep pushing medical marijuana forward around the country, one way or another. Why? Because every opportunity we have in state legislatures and the media to put patients and doctors up there, all the work that the organizations here, that ACE is doing with its increasingly national network, and MPP, and NORML, and DPA, and the state-based organizations, and SSDP, and everybody else, that every time that happens, we move forward, that we advance. The more the patient, and the more we do that also, the more we change the nature of the debate. The more we shift the debate over marijuana from what about the kids to what about the people who use this as medicine. The more we shift this thing into a more of a compassionate vein and away from the fearful vein. We know that. We also know, and I believe that California, I think the chances are that if marijuana is ever going to be legalized, I mean, this is an interesting question here now, with MPP doing the initiative in Nevada, and the numbers begin to creep up to 50% there, and looking at what might happen in Alaska, and the little victory that Dominic just described. But I sometimes think that maybe where it's really going to happen is in California. And here's why. It's not that, it's not that the public opinion numbers in favor of legalization in California are quite as high as they are in some other places, but it's that if you ask, where in the world is marijuana now sold more openly, more legally, than anywhere outside the Netherlands? There's only one answer. California. California. How many medical MCDs, medical cannabis dispensaries, whatever we're going to call them, how many of those things exist in California now?
37 in San Francisco.
37. How many statewide?
200.
219? 219 cannabis dispensaries. Living in a little bit of fear, never knowing if somebody might come in and the feds might come in. Living in a situation not unlike the Dutch coffee shops lived in the early 1980s. They weren't legal either. They weren't authorized under laws yet, right? Some of them would get poked on and shut down. Some of them because they weren't playing by rules. But more and more, they were becoming legitimized. They were becoming legitimized, right? When you look at what's happening now, when you look at the people with the ID cards, when you look at doctors who are going along, there's hundreds, thousands of doctors, right? We have this happening in the other states, of course, in Oregon and Washington and Hawaii and other ones as well, right? But what we have here is, 100,000 people? Over 100,000 people now, and more coming on in a legitimized way, in a state where even your governor and the former other Republican candidate also say people should be able to use marijuana legally for medicinal purposes. I think that if we start asking the question, where and how is this going to happen? The question to be asked is the medical cannabis dispensary approach, is that the one that's going to get institutionalized, legitimized, regularized, in part because it's going to submit to regulation and to everything that involves and make the compromises that are involved. And because then when you go back and you ask the public, what is it that you're really scared about, rationally speaking, about making marijuana legal for everybody, for all adults? Oftentimes what we found in our research is what people say is, I don't want it to be out of control. I don't want it to be out of control. And we respond very rationally, well, you don't want to be out of control. Keeping it illegal, prohibition makes it out of control, prohibition pretends to be the ultimate form of regulation, when in fact prohibition represents the abdication of regulation. Right? They come back and they go, yeah, I see what you're saying, that makes sense, but still, making it legal still seems like it's getting out of control. Right? So the intellectual argument is there, but now there's another vehicle coming along, which are the well-regulated cannabis dispensaries. Because what they do offer is a model of control. What they do offer is an outlet of control. What they do offer is something that people can look and see, and sometimes smell, as an element. Right? As an element of control. It's something that they can see works. Now here's the next question. Who's medical? What's medical? What is medical marijuana mean in a world in which, we're putting, tens of millions of young people and now older people on Ritalin and this and that and this, and people are on Prozac, and is Viagra medicine?
Yes.
I guess it all depends where you're standing. In this world, when the pharmaceutical companies are increasingly doing this thing, when every time you turn on the TV, I don't actually watch TV at home, but when I'm in hotel rooms, I turn on the TV, you flip channels, and one commercial after another, do you feel tired?